They called it the edge of the world, but names like maps often lie. In truth, it was just another desert, vast, aching with a silence too deep to measure, shimmering in waves of heat that seemed to stretch thought itself thin. There were no signs here, no cities crumbling in history's wake, no remnants of civilization to hint that life had ever dared pass through. Only dunes, wind, sky, and that peculiar stillness that hovers where the human world ends and something older begins. Somewhere, far behind him, lay the noise of cities, towers of ambition, screens of distraction, meetings, devices, appointments, an endless maze of artificial urgencies. That was the world he had once lived in, worked in, believed in, the world that had taught him how to function but never how to live. And so one day he left. He didn't pack bags. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even leave a note. He simply walked away, from his polished life, from his curated self, from everything that had grown around him like vines choking a tree. He had been a man of logic, of degrees and plans and practical thinking. He'd solved equations, run companies, built systems, but he could not solve the question that kept echoing in the empty halls of his heart. Why am I not at peace? He hadn't intended to wander into a desert. That's not how it happened. There was no dramatic choice, no sudden realization. It was more like an unraveling, a slow and silent rebellion against the machinery of the life he had built. One step followed another, each lighter than the last, until the roads gave way to dust, and the dust gave way to sand, and the sand welcomed him like a long-forgotten friend. There were no signs, no visions, no voices calling out to him, just heat and silence. But that silence didn't frighten him, not anymore. For the first time in his life, the absence of sound felt honest. It wasn't pretending. It wasn't trying to distract or comfort. It just was, like truth itself. Time passed strangely here. Days, hours, maybe even minutes. It all blurred into the rhythm of breath and sun and thirst. At night, the stars opened up above him in a silence louder than any city. They didn't sparkle. They watched. It was as though the universe itself leaned closer when everything else grew still. And then it happened. One evening, just as the horizon burned with the dying fire of the sun and the sky turned to ink, he saw something impossible. A stream. A stream of clear water winding gently through the sand, no wider than his hand, but undeniably real, and beside it, a figure in green, not glowing, not hovering, just sitting, like someone who had been waiting there since before the first question was ever asked. The man in green did not look at him. He stared at the stream as though it whispered stories only he could hear. The traveler blinked, rubbed his eyes, looked again, still there. He staggered closer, unsure whether from thirst or awe. "Are you real?" he croaked, his voice dry and unused. The man turned, and his smile held a warmth deeper than fire. "You've walked far enough to ask that question," he said. "Now are you ready to hear the answer?" The traveler didn't speak. He sank to the ground, more from gravity of presence than exhaustion. He couldn't explain it, but being near the man was like standing at the edge of something eternal. Not frightening, but vast. As if time itself had taken human form and was watching him without judgment. "I wasn't looking for you," he said softly. "I know," the man replied. "That's why you found me." The traveler furrowed his brow but said nothing. Logic, for once, had no place here. "You carry questions," the green-robed man continued. "Not about the world, about yourself. You've tasted life, its sweetness, its bitterness, its praise and its punishment. And now, all of it tastes the same." The traveler's eyes dropped. "I'm tired. I know. I want peace." "That's harder than it sounds," said the man, "because you're full of noise." The words struck like thunder in a canyon. He had never thought of it that way. But it was true. His thoughts never rested. His memories shouted over each other. His regrets circled like vultures over his hopes. "Then help me silence it," he whispered. The man pointed to the stream. "Drink." He looked at the water. It shimmered like moonlight woven into silk. Was it symbolic? Literal? Was this the legendary water of life he had once heard of in bedtime stories? Or just an illusion born of exhaustion? But something in him trusted the moment. He bent down, cupped his hands, and drank. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't cold. It wasn't even refreshing. But the moment it touched his throat, something within him shattered. Not violently, but with a quiet grace, like ice melting beneath a spring sun. Tears welled in his eyes, unbidden. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition. In a flood of forgotten moments, he remembered who he was, before the world had told him who to become. He remembered laughing under trees as a child, asking questions no one could answer, dreaming of stars without needing to own them. He remembered crying alone and not being ashamed. He remembered awe, wonder, silence. He remembered being human. The green-robed man said nothing, just watched. "Who are you?" the traveler finally asked. "I am one who drank," came the reply. "You found the water of life?" "I found the meaning of life," he said, looking at the stream. "The water only showed me what was already there." "Are you Khidr?" the traveler asked. The name emerged from deep in his memory, a mythical figure whispered of in childhood stories, a guide who appeared when the soul was ready. The man smiled. "Names are for those who need labels. I am what I was allowed to become." The traveler stared into the stream, overwhelmed by the simplicity of the moment. There was no miracle here, no divine thunder, just water, sand, silence, and truth. "But why me?" he asked quietly. "I've failed. I've lied. I've chased things that didn't matter. I'm not pure." "The spring does not choose the perfect," said the man. "It chooses the honest." The traveler looked up, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel unworthy. He felt real. "How many have you met?" he asked. "Enough to know that only a few truly see." The traveler nodded slowly. "What happens now?" he whispered. "You return." "To what?" "To the world." The traveler frowned. "But I don't want to go back." "You must," said the man. "Not with miracles, not with magic, but with memory. You will forget much of what you felt here. That is the way of things. But a stillness will remain within you. And when the world grows loud again, that stillness will call you back, not to the desert, but to yourself." The traveler reached for the water again. "It will vanish once I leave," said the man. "Because it was never here. It was in you." He stood. His robe moved not with the wind, but with something older, something eternal. He began to walk, slowly, deliberately, his feet leaving no trace. The traveler sat alone, but he was not alone. He knew now that the water of life had never been about eternal youth or physical immortality. It was about waking up, about remembering, about being truly alive. And so he stood, and walked back toward the world. Not as a prophet, not as a preacher, but simply as a man who had seen something real. He still forgot. He still fell. He still felt pain. But beneath it all, something had changed. A silence had taken root in him, one that no noise could kill. And sometimes, in the quiet moments of life, when he helped a stranger, when he stood in the rain, when he held the gaze of a child, he would feel that water again, flowing, softly, reminding, and in those moments, he would smile. Because somewhere in the deserts of the heart, Khidr still walks, and those who are ready will find him. Not by maps, not by miracles but by surrender.